Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 16 Playoffs Recap. We're almost all the way through Season 16. See if we have something special lined up for you for the finals, because that is all that's left. Got from 16 teams down to 2. I'm your host, IllLogic. I'm the coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
And for those of you who may have forgotten what we are up to here, remember this is the gym leader season. We have a round of 16 coaches that made the playoffs here with their gym offense teams. And we're going to take a look right now as a recap of the playoff schedule, 1 through 16 here as a heads up for what we're going through. We're just going to go through these in order from 1 down to 8. We'll see if there are any upsets or if we're going chalk all the way. Okay, round of 16, here we go. It's the 1-seeded Newport Noctowls against the 16-seeded Hippo Hides in their main league debut, but the Noctowls do win this one handily. After exchanging rocks, Noctowls used Alolan Muck to stop Empoleon from going off with the Iron Defense Weakness policy set, then Primarina Encores into Body Slam, which lets Annihilate come in and get a free bulk up off it. KO's Rotom, gets off another one while taking a Pecharunt hit, KO's that too. Even if Iron Valiant forces it out, Scizor gets a free U-turn KO on Necrozma. Prim and Scizor team up to KO Mamoswine after Annihilate goes down, and Scizor can Terra Steel to finish off the Valiant and Empoleon, and that is game. Next up, my 2-seeded Buffalo Bouffalant facing the 15-seeded Grass Guzzlers in their WCL debut. But man, we were this close to the upset of the season, though my Bouffalant do prevail in a close one. Early, we almost trade Gliscor for Ogerpon, but the Cornerstone puts up spikes instead of going for a KO, though along with the Hammerot, there's all 3 layers. Gliscor gets to Toxic, the Latias and its own spikes are doing a lot of damage, but Dragapult can take advantage of a Scarf and get off a D-Dance against Hammerot, but Meloetta is the answer. Dragapult trying to set up more, and Meloetta gets the KO instead, so the Tropicos at least gets rid of spikes. A lot of switching around. Latias is low, but the paralyzed Necrozma goes down to a crit from Gengar, though it's revenged by Greninja to bring it to 3-3. The real misplay comes here. Blaziken anticipates a switch trying to set up and stays in to get KO'd by a Grensurf, which is huge. Quaquaval sacked and Tropicos gets nailed by a Sing into Terra Normal Hyper Voice, but with just Gren left, it does finish off Meloetta and Latias, clinching the tough win for the Bouffalant. Next up is the 3-seeded Aggron Aggrons against the 14-seeded Evergrande Empoleons in their main league debut, and it's the Aggrons moving on. The Aggrons get the early lead with a Flame Body Burn on Meowscarada and setting up hazards on Assault Cure Diancie that can't break through the defensive core, including Skarmory, walling the Terraflying Landorus, but First Blood in an Oko for a Great Tusk with Moonblast. Volcarona gets a couple KOs, and though Sneasler can revenge it and Weavile, Skarmory just beats everything that's left of the Iron Defense set, can't beat the Metal Bird, so the Aggrons move on. Next match, it's your 4-seeded Waterdeep Wobbuffets in a finals rematch against the 13-seeded Close Combat Club, but the Wobbuffets move on with relative ease. Wobbuffets get ahead early with Glamore setting up rocks and Memento to allow Annihilate to set up a bulk up and tank hits for Rage Fist, KOing 3 Mons and poised to sweep, but there's an accidental switch. Oops, not to worry, as Rotom and Ogerpon have your back the rest of the match. Even against a scary Tauros, it's a 3-0, but it wasn't that close. The Wobbuffets with the big win. Halfway through, next match is the 5-seeded Corinth Phalanx making their main league debut against the 12-seeded Boulder Boulders, but here's the biggest upset of the first round. It's the Boulders who break through and finally grab that coveted playoff win in a tough 1-0 match. Tropicos breaks early, including the Oko on Torkoal and getting up rocks before going down, allowing Hoodra to clean up Raging Bolt before going down itself to Weavile, and Thundy getting the Skarmory KO, but throws away the Thundy to Weavile, and then Weavile wins the upper hand prediction game to KO Rillaboom 2. Sneasler finally brings that down, but Walking Away can revenge that, so it's down to Grassy Seed Comfey, which gets up a couple Calm Minds. Ogerpon and Comfey both low. Who wins? Spike Shield 1, Spiky Shield 2 to bring it very low, but the third one cannot land. Comfey gets to KO with Draining Kiss, and the Boulders emerge the winner. Next match, it's the 6-seeded Hungry Hypnos making their main league debut against the 11-seeded Cincinnati Incineroar, and how about another upset win? The Incineroar take this barn burner from match. Thundurus gets off a nasty spot and KOs Ursaluna and Gyarados, but Bronzong gets off Trick Room and KOs. Overqwil takes down Hammerot easily too, but there's Iron Moth with the agility, and Meteor Beam to KO Volcanion. 3 more moves finish off the Hypnos. The Incineroar move on. Next match, the 7-seeded Calgary Corviknight against the 10-seeded Seattle Steamrollers. We've got another upset lined up for you. The Corviknight just cannot get that elusive playoff win. The Steamrollers moving on to defend their gym leader title. We do love seeing dual screens Clefable and Psychic Terrain Monkey Dory, but that Ogerpon got greedy trying to set up in front of T-Wave T-Tar. It and Komodo go down in exchange for half the Steamrollers team, but those were your Palafin answers, so it just kind of wins, you know? Palafin does Palafin things for Chad. And finally, it's the 8-seeded Route 1 Burbs against the 9-seeded Wooper Boopers, and it's the Burbs making their playoff return meaningful with a big win to close out the first round. Alomoa tanks so well. Lando and Iron Hands trade big damage, some good maneuvering between Serena and Ceruledge, but Chenpao finishes off the spinner and Deoxys, and does enough to Ogerpon that it goes down soon after too. Alomoa can finish off the Hands and the Inteleon. It's a solid win for the Burbs. That's going to recap our round of 16. We're down to just the final 8 here, the quarterfinals, which we'll be going over next shortly. Steve, there are a couple things that stand out to me. I do see 3 upsets, quote-unquote, here from the Boulders, Incineroar, and Steamrollers. But I guess maybe the bigger story, we were excited to see all these newcomers, new faces here. A couple of teams that had done very well from beginner league teams, and the Guzzlers who put on a great performance as a new coach too. But none of them are here. They're all missing, and we're just left with some of the staples of the main league.
Yep, that certainly is the case here, and it's bound to happen eventually. But it was nice to see some of them make it into playoffs, have some close games. Especially I'd like to shout out the Grass Guzzlers for a fantastic close game with you. A couple of misplays, and given that you were only able to pull up with a 1-0 victory, really looking forward to seeing them in the future. But yeah, a lot of these teams coming up that were new to the league really had a chance to shine. The Phalanx also with a really close one against the Bulldors. Really looking forward to see what these teams can do looking forward. But in terms of upsets, we did have a couple based on seeding. But outside of really like the top three, the 4 through 8 seeds, I wouldn't always necessarily consider them the favorites in these matchups. A lot of them were very close. Myself going against the club with a rematch of last season's finals. We have down at the other ends the Burbs and Boopers. The Burbs kind of been slipping recently. The Boopers doing very strong, but they were able to pull it out. And a lot of these matchups where it was beginner teams coming up from the beginners league that have done very well in their main league debut, going up against some of those more consistent teams from the main league that just happened to drop one match, whether it was due to a forfeit or because they just weren't ready for doubles week one, whatever it was. They were able to come in, pick up some key wins, and reestablish some playoff wins here. And for some teams, a return. You mentioned the Burbs that return to playoffs. The Bulldors getting their first playoff win, really doing fantastic here, getting a chance to go. Incineroar staying in shape. The Steamrollers coming up here, and after a couple seasons of not doing great, trying to defend their gym leader season crown, picking up a win here, going on to the next round. So a lot of good stories still, even without some of those newer coaches sticking around.
And this round definitely has a lot of fun storylines here too. Bouffalant and Incineroar is a classic in the playoffs. Seem to find each other so often. Every time the Incineroar do well, they end up running into the Bouffalant. See if that'll change. Aggron's one of the teams that even kind of had the Steamrollers number even earlier on, before they were able to get their title. The Aggrons, I think, beat them a couple times in the playoffs. That's a fun matchup too. See if one of them can get to the quarterfinals, get past the quarterfinals into the semifinals. First time in a while. Wobbuffets Burbs, another absolute classic here. Both two teams with some long stretches of dominance, but the Wobbuffets are deep in theirs right now. See if the Burbs can turn that around. With that, I think it's time to go over the quarterfinals matches. We've got 4 bangers to go over, so let's go to it. Starting off with the Noctowls again, facing the lowest remaining seed in the Boulder Boulders. It's going to be the Noctowls walking with this one, a convincing 3-0. Early, it's Hoodra and Annihilate. Gooey activating Defiant, but Steel Beam does at least keep the monkey low. How about the Thunderous using Swagger on Rotom Heat, activating Mirror Herb to boost Acrobatics too? But even though the resist move does over half, Will-O-Wisp does neuter the set Overheat, finishing it off even as Sneasel revenges. A lot of swapping around, but Torn can take down Sneasler, and Scizor takes down Comfy. Harknine can KO Annihilate and almost finish Garchomp. Rillaboom can finish it, but ultimately Scizor can finish Rillaboom. Noctowls get into the semis. Next match is my Buffalo Bouffalant again facing Incineroar. My Bouffalant had a long history of playoff success against Matt, and that does continue, but just barely. Another 1-0 for the Bouffalant. The lead Hamrot puts in work. I got up Stealth Rock, but an Aqua Cutter crit seals Aquaball's fate, and U-turn from Gren doesn't KO, so the risky pivot into Dragapult fails. The Dragon gets O-Code by Ceaseless Edge. Hamrot escapes too, and it's Moltres versus Iron Moth. The bird eating a Toxic and getting the Moth very low, allowing Gren to KO it. Scizor and it defogs away the rocks, but Tinkaton gets them right back up. Rillaboom trying to set up, but Knockoff and Gigaton Hammer bring it low. Then into Moltres to eat a huge knockoff, but KO with the Helmet, and the Helmet trades with the remaining health from Hamrot too to make it back to 3-3. That means Terra Dark Gren gets the KO on Scizor with Dark Pulse, which is huge. Valiant is booster speed and KOs Tinkaton with close combat, but that opens up the door for Scarf Gren to KO with Hydro Pump. Even as Pump misses 2 more times against Thundy, the Tropicos has been full health in the back the whole time and finishes off the Genie. A tight one, clutched up by the Bouffalant. Next match is the Aggrons and the Steamrollers playing for a spot in the top 4. Yes, please. And the Aggrons are the ones up to the task with a convincing 4-0 win. Terra Water Bundle can't quite KO Garganackle, letting it get off good chips. Salamence can dual wing beat the Great Tusk for half, but Ice Spinner will KO back. Sorry about that. Garg sacked to the incoming Bundle, who's getting low. Regieleki sets up Reflect, but Weavile is okay to trade its life for the Brick Break, especially if it lets Ogerpon get off a Trailblaze to KO T-Tar, and then another one on Iron Boulder, followed by Hornleech. That means it doesn't matter how much speed Chad has. Bundle outsped and KO'd. Excadrill outsped and KO'd in the sand. Regieleki outsped and KO'd. 2 Trailblazes are enough for the Aggrons to move on to the semis. And finally, Steve's Waterdeep Wobbuffets taking on Michael's Route 1 Burbs in a Channel Creator showdown. but Steve will not be denied in the playoffs, taking the narrow 1-0 win. It's a good start for the Burbs as Komodo KOs Glamora in exchange for rocks, plus even though Dragonite can set up 2 D-dances, Muse, Willow, and Haze are a hard stop. Weakness policy proc, Mew will KO it anyways with another Dazzling Gleam. Easy, and Komodo keeps the momentum going with a Dark Pulse resist, but Hypnosis hits. Darkrai gets a free turn to set up Nasty Plot, but the one turn sleep Vacuum Wave to chip for almost half before the Dragon goes down. Rotom walls Chien-Pao for now, and then Volt Switch doing too much to Alomomola, so it sacked Darkrai. Another Hypnosis hits, this on Corviknight, but it's another one turn sleep. Corv is low, but Body Press does KO. Ogerpon KOs to even the score, and now it's Ogerpon Showdown. Cornerstone outspeeds, and it's an Oko with Ivy Cudgel. Is that it? Well, Scarf Annihilate, close combat KOs through the Terra Rock defense boost. Mew tries to take advantage of the Spadef drops, but it's a simple Rotom sack and switch back in. Great call in the Annihilate set to finish off the Burbs and route out our top 4 for Season 16. And there it is, our top 4, and, well, maybe unfortunately, maybe fortunately, because we're both in there, it's the top 4 seeds who made it into the semifinals. Some classics in here, plus the Agrons, who we make fun of them for lack of playoff success, but honestly, they decently often get to semis, make the playoffs consistently, and then falter. So that's not too surprising to see here. Some real classics here, some classic matchups for sure, Steve.
Yeah, somehow I managed to avoid you in the top 4, so that's a nice change of pace. We'll see if I end up seeing you in the finals here. But, the Agrons and the Bouffalant, the Agrons have had a lot of trouble against the Bouffalant historically, especially in the playoffs. I don't think they've won any of those. So really excited to see if the Agrons are able to turn it around this season, making it further than they have in a while. And the Wobbuffets and Noctiles in the semifinals. It's a tale as old as, the past couple of seasons pretty much. Once again, going to be another fantastic match, and hoping I'm able to pull this one out as well.
Shout out especially to the Incineroar and to the Burbs for making some real close matches, almost keeping both of us out of the semis. But we made it. I got no real big upsets here. 1, 2, 3, and 4, including the top 3 seeds coming in, all here, so not too many surprises all around. We're just going to go ahead and take a look at what happened in the semifinals as well. 2 matches left to go. And hey, how about that top one? It's a battle of the Annihilate, a common playoff matchup in recent times, the Newport Noctiles and the Waterdeep Wobbuffets. But this one will go the way of the Noctiles, finally getting over the Wobbuffets in the semis to move on to another finals. The Noctiles ape outspeeds the Wobbuffets ape and gets off a taunt plus Stealth Rock while getting a free Rage Fist boost from U-Turn. At least Darkrai can trigger a Scarf and then stays in boldly to get a Hypnosis off on Alolan Muck, but it can't do much, and here comes Annihilate back into KO. Rotom lives a Rage Fist and gets off the Willow. That plus Helmet plus Pain Split will KO the ape, even as Rotom Heat KOs its Washing Machine counterpart. Garchomp versus Steve's Annihilate. Swords Dance up on Ape's Rocks. This is a precarious position. Terra Dragon Scale Shot hits 5 times with a crit, but Annihilate does live. But Steve picks the wrong move to take advantage, hoping for another SD by clicking Encore. So what can Garchomp do now? Well, it KOs Annihilate, it KOs Ogerpon, Glamora 2, and E-Speed from D-Knight will not Oko, so another one finishes off Steve's last hope. The Noctiles stomping their way into the finals. And finally, it's my Buffalo Bouffalant facing the Akron Agrons, another one-sided playoff matchup history. But on this side, the streak continues. My Bouffalant with a dominant win over the Agrons. A different Tropicos from every other week. The Bouffalant lead with Terra Starstorm, doing over half to Skarmory, KOing it on the next turn. Tinkaton swaps into Take Flurge as a Scarf, neat little trick. But on the Wish, the next turn, it's an easy switch back into Tropicos. That'll force another KO. Agrons have to sack something. They pick Flurges in exchange for getting a Wish off. Into Volcarona into Quiver Dance, but into Dragapult to copy the boost with Mirror Herb. Dragon Darts will 2-hit KO in exchange for taking a Fiery Dance. Not looking good for the Agrons. Terra Ice Shard will KO at least, but Moltres can KO Ogerpon Wellspring, staying in on a Trailblaze to KO with Brave Bird, but at least Weavile can miss Triple Axle. Tanks the Flamethrower, and that gets burned by Flame Body and only hits 1 time to go down anyways. Great Tusk tanks an Aqua Step, but can't also tank Aqua Jet. It's a 4-0 for the Bouffalant, and the finals are set. And not quite as interesting matchup in those last couple there. There were a couple turns, I think, in your match, Steve, where it was a little precarious, is probably a decent word for that, where it could have tipped either way, but ended up being a bit of a stomp there. And my match against the Agrons just continues to happen. That means you've got Noctiles and Bouffalant left for the finals.
Yep, that is the case. I definitely should have clicked Rage Fist there, but felt I knew what my set was, and he didn't, and so I made the wrong play there. But anyways, on to the finals. Noctiles and Bouffalant, a tale as old as time. These two teams being the perennial 1 and 2 seed. They have a storied past of playoff. Wait a second. Fun fact, everyone. The Noctiles and the Bouffalant, despite being the perennial 1 and 2 seed for very long, I actually forget when that started, they have not met in the playoffs yet. This will be the first time the two are facing against each other. They did play together in Seasons 9's multi-battle playoffs and won that, but this will be the first time they've played each other in any playoff game throughout the history of the league. So that is kind of crazy to think about there.
That is pretty insane. Our history, especially in the past several seasons, since about, as you said, the time that the Noctels took over the number 2 spot there and have been threatening the number 1 for a long time now. All those matches have been so fun, so interesting. It's very close games overall there too. From me being the only one to take a game off of his season 8 championship run, to him critting my Swampert to take the number 1 seed from there in the regular season. These have been awesome matchups pretty much all the way down, but to never happen in the playoffs between us. I guess that's kind of what happens when you have the floating seeding, and we end up being relatively high there as well. Yeah, I'm not sure here. The Noctels, the number 1 seed coming in, and well deserving, and why Bouffalant have struggled a little bit in a couple of these playoff matches. This should be a very fun one, Steve. What do you think?
Yeah, it really is going to be an exciting match. I know you and I, with our recent playoff success, has kind of been joking about asking someone to take it over for us. You were really looking forward to the Agrons winning, but you unfortunately had to beat them. And of all the coaches that could take it, the most likely would be Jimmy, but neither of us wants that. He's got too much of a storied season himself. We're trying to get someone new in here, but the Bouffalant and the Knocked Owls, it'll be a fantastic matchup. Really looking forward to some high level play. And maybe it'll end up like the semifinals with a little bit of a stomping with something getting set up, or maybe it'll be some of these earlier games, a real close game coming down to the wire with some key decisions making the difference.
And as one last fun little note, both of us did lose in the first round back in Season 7 when we did this before. I definitely remember our consolation match that we had would have gone very differently if Jimmy's bounce Gyarados had landed against my Tangela, but it did not land. I was able to take a W in that kind of exhibition match there. We'll see how things go around this time. And hey, one of these teams will get the chance to face the Elite Four. Will be a little bit different. If Noctels can win, that will introduce the Rite of Egg, I believe, as the replacement Elite Four team. Otherwise, maybe I'll get a chance to go through that myself too, so that could be fun. So that'll wrap it up for this video. Make sure to come back and check out what we've got going on for finals coverage. Obviously, I'm a part of the crew that is playing in the finals, so I won't really be able to do much. So come back and see if maybe we have something special for you there. At the very least, we'll let you know what happened here as we wrap up Season 16 and are already starting to look forward to Season 17. So that'll do it for us, and we'll see you in the next video.